Welcome back. Earlier this week, we talked about the recent profile of blue-collar workers in Ohio that says that Democrats are still as out of touch with that region as they were in 2016, and that those voters intend to stick by President Trump. The New York Times notes that Trump still has a, quote, tight bond with voters there who were once staunch Democrats, and that the current Democratic Party is pitching the wrong message. As the former Democratic chairman of Mahoning County tells the paper, the Democratic Party has lost its voice to speak to people that shower after work and not before work. All we're saying that he won't turn over his tax returns. He's saying, I'm fighting China to get you better jobs. He also added that while Democrats in Washington harp on President Trump's unfitness for office, his taxes and possible impeachment, the president is solidifying blue-collar support through an aggressive trade war with China, even if his tariffs mean economic pain in the short term. Joining us now from Youngstown, Ohio, Democratic presidential candidate, Congressman Tim Ryan of Ohio. Welcome back to the show, Tim.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Congressman, you can join the conversation we were having last segment as well as last week on this issue. And we were talking about how the president will pick a fight with Nancy Pelosi or other people or send out an outrageous tweet so he doesn't have to talk to Youngstown, Ohio voters about the fact that he promised to be a populist president, but he cut taxes for his richest billionaire buddies at Mar-a-Lago. He's trying to take away pre-existing protections on health care. He promised he was going to expand health care. He hasn't done that. Yeah. He's promised that he was going to lower it. I mean, all of these issues that mattered most to people in Youngstown, Macomb County, Wisconsin. Talk about that and talk about how the Democratic Party needs to sharpen their message to win Youngstown, to win Scranton, to win Middle America.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why I'm running for president, because I believe somebody that comes from this area, that watched him make these promises over the last couple of years and do nothing but distract and not fulfill those promises, is the person that can beat him. And the reality of it is, Joe and Mika, and you've had this conversation just in the last few minutes, is that the workers are still suffering. I mean, I don't know why this conversation and why sometimes Democrats are afraid to take on the economy. 75% of people are still living paycheck to paycheck. They're just getting by, just surviving, and they're sick of it because it's been going on for decades. People want to thrive again, and Trump does not have any policies. Yeah, he punches China in the mouth, and I do think the New York Times article was a little bit overstated, because people like the fact that he's punching China in the mouth, because they do cheat, and this issue with Huawei is a real issue. But the reality is we're getting our clock cleaned by China. They dominate the electric vehicle market. They dominate the solar panel market. They're running circles around us in the future of work and fifth-generation internet. The president has no plan. So all he can do is distract, and we need a plan moving forward. And look, I have one. And if people think this is a good message, they want to hear it on the debate stage, they want Democrats to represent it, go to TimRyanForAmerica.com, because this is what we're going to campaign on and talk about and deliver for the American people.
Congressman, we talked about it before, but let's talk about it again. What do Democrats need to do to reach voters in Youngstown? Why is it that not only voters in Youngstown, but voters across Middle America sometimes vote against their economic self-interest? This is a guy who, again, passed tax cuts, flew down on Air Force One, sat around with his billionaire buddies at Mar-a-Lago, and that night laughed and said, I just made you guys a lot of money. But working class Americans got stiffed. Do they know?
Yeah.
Do they care?
Well, we've got to talk about it. And again, it's difficult in this environment because everybody does want to talk about his taxes and talk about the Mueller report and everything else. We have got to be very, very disciplined in how we talk about the real problems that people are dealing with every single day. There's a mental health crisis in the country. There's an opiate crisis in the country. There's a methamphetamine crisis in Iowa. Farmers haven't made a profit in 5 years, and we're still suffering here in manufacturing America. We've got to have a message that is very clear that says we're going to start building stuff again. We're going to move away from this finance economy, and we're going to move to making things again. And look, you cut the workers in on the deal and tell these workers, look, I know General Motors just got rid of the third shift in Youngstown. I know the truckers are getting laid off. We're going to build electric vehicles. We're going to do everything in our power to dominate that market. China dominates it today. They control 40 to 50%. Trump's asleep at the switch. Tim Ryan, President of the United States, we're going to have an industrial policy that drives that, because that's manufacturing, Joe, moving away from finance. Solar panels, same thing. China controls 60% of that market. If Tim Ryan's president, we're going to figure out how to dominate that market. Not a government organized, but the free market, the Department of Energy, venture capital, Department of Transportation. How do we invest into the research and make this stuff again? We've got to rebuild the manufacturing base. And if you go to Ohio, West Virginia, Ohio, Western PA, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, you will resonate with people because they want to build things, and they're not doing it with Donald Trump.
Congressman, it's Willie. It's good to see you this morning. The president in the 2016 campaign, of course, the promise was the jobs are coming back. These old industries will return. I'm going to bring them back from China. I'm going to bring them back from Mexico. That means steel, auto, coal jobs. He put some hope in the hearts of people who voted for him in Youngstown, for example. Now that plant in Lordstown, not far from where you're sitting, is sitting idle at this time. Those workers are not making cars. What do you say to those workers? Because there is some comfort in saying the jobs are coming back. When you give something of a reality check, what's the reaction you get? What hope do you give?
Well, you got to have a plan for them. You got to have a vision for a new America. That if we come together, if we're not divided, that we actually can dominate the new economy. There's an industrial revolution happening in the world today, Willie, and the problem is China's dominating it. And you've got to go to coal country. Coal country's down 30,000 jobs in the last 10 years. That doesn't even make any sense to go to coal country and tell them you're going to give them their coal job back. You respect them. You want to make sure they have their pension and their health care benefits. But all of this industrial policy that I'm talking about, is got to be, the growth has got to be driven into the older areas of the old economy. West Virginia, Western PA, Ohio, old steel, old coal, old auto, old rubber. Those are the places that need the benefit. And you can use the tax code, and you can use the power of the federal government, and the organizing power of the federal government to drive that free market into those areas and lift people up. When you go to communities like that and explain it to them, it resonates with them because it's an actual plan. And you say, look, these areas of the economy are growing at 25 to 30% a year. Why are we letting China dominate? There's 800 component parts to a wind turbine. We make that stuff. Let's bring it to Youngstown and Gary, Indiana, and Michigan. That's how you win elections. You talk about how you're going to lift people's quality of life up.
So, Congressman, I want to ask you about this running debate in your own party about if they can chase the white working class voters that you're talking about in Ohio, or should they chase the rising electorate, black and brown voters, and left voters and young voters. And I wonder if you think the party has to make a choice in this election, or if there is a message that can get both groups of people to show up at the polls.
I don't think you have to make a choice. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. All of these people are important to the country, not just the Democratic Party, but the country. When you talk about criminal justice reform and the fact that an African American kid will go to jail 5 or 6 times longer than a white kid for a crime around marijuana and serve a sentence that's 20% longer, yeah, that's a criminal justice issue, but that's an economic issue too, because that person then gets put behind the 8 ball for the rest of their life. So you can talk about criminal justice, you can talk about immigration in the context of how do we grow the economy, how do we get everyone on the field playing for us in the United States of America with the Team USA jersey on. We've got to have it. We only have 330 million people in the country. We're competing against 1.4 billion in China. So we can't afford to have a racist criminal justice system. We can't afford to have a broken immigration system. These are all economic issues too. And so if you frame it like we want everybody on the field, all the forgotten people, all the forgotten communities, like the ones I represent, Let's go. Let's go and compete with China. Let's beat China in a real economic competition. That's how America wins this thing. And if you think that makes sense, go to TimRyanForAmerica.com. I want to get on the debate stage and make this argument across the country.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Congressman, I'm sorry. What was that website again?
TimRyanForAmerica.com, Joe. I'm going to look and see if you've given me $5 or not.
Joe,
For America.
can I just jump in, Joe? The website is SaturdayNightPolitics.com. If you want to see Tim Ryan's website, it's Saturday Night Politics.
Seriously, kids, do not look up Saturday Night Politics. Go check out
Tim Ryan.
TimRyanForAmerica.com. Okay.
Congressman Tim Ryan, thank you.
Thanks,
well said. Very well said.
Willie, that's an old Homer Simpson trick when he was trying to sell Mr. Plow. What's that number again? Exactly.
No.
Tim Ryan
again is Mr. Plow.
Great.
We should
Tim
point
Ryan.
out that Donnie's website has been blocked by most corporate servers. For good,
Yeah, it's
reasons.
inappropriate content.
I will
Not
also
safe
say
for
any
work.
parent that has spyware on their kids' iPhones,
Yeah, you can't get it.
will be blocked automatically.
Yeah, it's
no
just
question.
that way you can't get to Donnie. Up next, the new poll that has Joe Biden still far ahead of the Democratic field, but the very notable movement by some of the other candidates. As we go to break, a look at the new cover of
I love this.
The New Yorker, entitled The Shining.
This is wonderful.
that's great.
Not the Jack Nicholson film, but an illustration of Lindsey Graham, William Barr, and Mitch McConnell
Thank you,
shining the president's shoes.
David Remnick, for all you do for America.
We'll
Morning
be
Joe.
back.
We'll be right back.